Noah Simmons, Clubhouse assistant at the Atlanta Braves. How you doing? What's up?
I'm good, man. About yourself, Will?
I'm doing really good. It's cool to chat with you because we kind of have an indirect connection, I guess, because I remembered you actually hit me up back in 2015. First of all, do you remember that? You hit me up on LinkedIn and you had seen my article in on this website called workinsports.com, and I had written about my internship experience with the Flying Squirrels, and you actually reached out to kind of pick my brain and see kind of like what was my journey like to get into sports because you were trying to do the same thing. Obviously, you've more than made it to where you are now. But first of all, do you remember that? Do you remember writing that back in the day?
I think so because then I think later that fall or somewhere along the line, you had reached out to me. I think maybe about an opportunity. I want to think it was maybe with Augusta, but I had already, I think, signed on to do something in the Cape League. But yeah, I do remember that. I mean, that was back in a time when I was sending hundreds of things out to different people trying to
Yeah.
find something. But yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm sure, like you said, you were reaching out to tons of people. I was doing the same thing. I was trying to figure out like how do people get to where they are, and especially when you're trying to get into something like sports, which is obviously, as you know, very competitive, and there's only so few jobs in each sport. Like I said, you're the clubhouse assistant for the Atlanta Braves. So how did you get to where you are? I know you went to the University of Oregon, and you've had internships and things like that, but how did it all kind of come together for you to get to where you are now?
It's definitely interesting to try and sit and explain it. And even as we led into this, I definitely tried to sit back and really think about it. I mean, for me, it really just, I guess, started from out of high school when I was going to Oregon. I was trying to find something in the athletic department. Somehow I got in with the football program, helping out at practice. Inputting practice play information into XOS Thunder, which is the best way to describe it. It's like Excel, but for football, just for breaking down video, things like that. I did that for part of the 2013 season, and it was through that I realized trying to go into that route, trying to be in, I guess, front office with a team, or at least with pro football team, probably wasn't something I would be interested in doing. Just that grind wasn't for me. That internship ended. I was replaced by technology. I don't know the economic term for it, but that's just how it happened. So I spent most of my sophomore year, if not all of it, trying to find other opportunities, see where I could just find some way to get experience, something to put on my resume. And it was at the end of my sophomore year. I interviewed for a job with Oregon baseball, didn't get it, but the guy who ran equipment for Oregon baseball at the time said, "Hey, really like you, want to still find a role for you." So he offered me an equipment or a student manager job with women's lacrosse. So I took that. I ran with it for 2 years, enjoyed it. It was a unique experience. I played lacrosse in high school, so I was able to, uh, just rely on that background. It was a great experience. And then getting out of college, I was trying to find opportunities that would work for me. And it was my parents who, I think, after 6 weeks of searching, finally told me, Noah, you like equipment. I know when we asked you back in January, you kind of balked at, is this something you'd want to pursue? And a lot of that was because, well, I don't know. That whole fear of missing out thing, 'cause you don't want to go down a path that could be wrong versus one that's right. And that was kind of, I guess, the whole, universe aligns, or you finally see that, what, you do enjoy this. This is something you would want to do for a career. And that's when I pivoted and just started sending stuff out to other people I knew in equipment. Cody Crump, who works in Olympic sports at Houston, he was the Olympic sports intern at Oregon my junior year, so 2015 to 2016. And he told me UAB football is looking for someone. So I reached out to Gage Witten, who was running equipment for them at the time, and interviewed with him. And yeah, within a couple weeks, I was hired. And then I hopped in my car and drove across country over 4 days to start there in the middle of August. I think that was in 2017. So I was there for the 2017 season. And as we were getting towards the end of the year, uh, I had gotten an email back from Eric Durbin, who's an assistant equipment manager on the home side, the home clubhouse for the Braves. I had sent stuff out to, I think, all but maybe five or six MLB teams. I bought the baseball almanac from 2017, and just figured out email formats, letterhead, all of that to be able to send stuff out. And he reached back out to me, said, "Hey, we've got something open that's part time. Would you be interested? I know this is where you were back in July, but where are you now?" And that was where just the process started for that in terms of interviewing for it. I was offered it in earlier mid December. This was right before we were going to head to the Bahamas Bowl that season to play Ohio. And yeah, I mean, I accepted it, and I've been here in Atlanta ever since, really.
Your journey is obviously very unique. However, at the same time, I think very common in a sense or relatable to a lot of people that are trying to break into sports or go about it. Kind of similar to how you did, and obviously, you like you said, going back to Oregon, internships, different roles, and just kind of trying to figure out like what's my next path or who can I reach out to, and just trying to do that. And so, definitely get that. It's really awesome that you've made it to where you are now. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give others, or what advice would you even give yourself if you would you do anything differently, or kind of more or less I mean, it all worked out the way it did, so
In a sense, it did, yes. I would have probably just gone back and told 22-year-old me in January or February, hey, you should probably just start, researching stuff now. Don't wait until June or July, in the sense of what other opportunities could be out there. But I mean, the people I met at UAB, Ryan Nicholson, who I just saw him yesterday, I drove down to, or drove out west to Birmingham to see him. One of my best friends. He runs equipment there now for football. Gage Witten, who was my boss in 2017, he now runs equipment for Georgia football. And I just saw him over the All Star break, another great guy who I've kept in touch with over the years. Two really good dudes I've learned a lot from, really do consider great friends. So when you look at those things then and put it in that perspective, I wouldn't. But just from, I guess, common sense perspective, I would have probably just gone back and told myself at 22, yeah, you should probably start researching earlier than maybe, a month post grad. But everyone's journey is different. There's people who have certainly way crazier journeys than mine out there. So honestly, I wouldn't change anything.
day to day with the Braves. So you mentioned that this role is part-time, right? Or are you full-time?
Well, I mean, it's part time in the sense that I'm not full salaried. It benefits all that, hourly and
Yeah.
everything. But still, I mean, through my job, you get player tips, things like that at the end of the year. I've been fortunate with us going to the playoffs. My work, I've been able to get some of postseason share money, which has helped out as well. But in terms of the structure, there's two people above me, Chris Hunter, Eric Durbin, they're assistants on the home side, so they're full salaried. And then Calvin Manazian, who he came here last year from the Nationals. He's the head equipment and clubhouse manager on the home side. And there's a few other people at my level that are clubhouse assistants on the home side and also on the visiting clubhouse side, which is run by Fred Stone, who's a great dude.
I get like part-time in the sense of like you said, maybe the benefits and things like that, but I know it's full-time, especially in the middle of a baseball season. Just being an intern really once with when I was with the Green Jackets, like we mentioned at the top. I was, doing media relations and marketing. So I was in the clubhouse a lot and I was seeing what our clubby was doing and what his assistant was doing on the visiting side. And I was thinking, wow, that's super like obviously there's not a lot of downtime except for maybe in the middle of our games, maybe a few innings when the players were obviously playing. They had like a few innings to kind of, chill out for a second. But what's your day to day? I know the Braves are currently in Miami, so definitely a road game for them. But what's your typical game day situation like, or in season experience like?
Well, most of our home games start 7:20 out at Truist, so we'll be there on a normal day when it isn't show and go. We'll be there at usually 12 o'clock. We'll put uniforms back in the lockers. We send those out to get washed, and then they'll come back in the morning. So we'll hang uniforms up. We'll hang laundry loops back into lockers. I'll run the kitchen towels from the night before in the laundry. Start anything else that needs to get done. Any laundry, like our staff laundry that we ran the night before when we left, that gets flipped and then hung up. So we'll do those things, just reset the locker room, reset the clubhouse in the morning, and then as the day goes on, if there's things players need, if there's other little things we need to get done. I mean, during the summer we've got a lot of holiday games, so the gear, hats for that. We'll be getting guys sized for that. Someone will be heat pressing labels onto socks so we can give those out to players. So just those other little, I guess, day to day things as the season goes on, and then uh, during the game we'll have laundry running from throughout the day as guys come in, work out, do early work, whatever they need to do to get ready for the game. During the game, we'll hang that laundry back up into lockers. We'll refold towels, put those back into the towel racks in the players' and coaches' bathrooms. And then post game, it'll be restocking coolers, collecting laundry, running that through. Just kind of a repeat of that cycle from before the game and then post game, that repeats. And then, yeah, it'll be just grab whatever's in the post game spread and then head home, and hopefully it's not too late in the
Yeah.
evening. I guess the best way to
Yeah.
describe that.
No, I get that. I remember, so I'm sure similarly for you, like, I remember our games were, I don't know, 7 o'clock, for instance, but I'm there at 8 a.m. doing my normal day-to-day stuff, and then we still have the game that night, and then I'm getting back at probably midnight because I'm doing all the internet, website, social media stuff. So, what time are you getting to the stadium typically?
For a 7:20 game, usually 12. If it's a 1 o'clock game, or 12:30, if it's just a day game or a getaway day at the end of a homestand, we're there at 8. Show and goes, which I think for people, it's basically players just have to be dressed by a certain time before the game starts. Any early work they need to do, hitting the cages, do infield work, that's just on their own. So for us in that case, we won't show up, say, dressed as 5:30. We'll be there at 2 or 2:30, depending, just to make sure stuff's back into the lockers, laundry, uniforms, all that. And so you get a few extra hours of sleep depending on that. It just depends if it's, say, you have a long game, it runs late or extra innings. They may decide, well, we're just going to do a show and go, so everyone can get a little extra sleep and all that. We've had a few more of those this summer, which has been nice. I've appreciated it, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But typically, unless it's a show and go, we're there at 12 o'clock for a 7:20 game, or 8 in the morning for a 1 o'clock game. Although a show and go dressed at 10:30 for a 1 o'clock game doesn't do anything for us because we still got to be there at 8 o'clock.
You're obviously experienced. You've been doing this for a while now. You have the routine obviously down. It sounds very, you know exactly what to do and how to go about it. There's always going to be stressful moments that might pop up. Can you talk about any specific situations that can arise that, like, you know how to handle, but it can get kind of stressful, or things that you've learned since you started to where you are now?
Well, I mean, to answer the whole stressful part, I could say the 2020 season with just COVID
Oh,
protocol and navigating all that. But I guess the best lesson I've learned is, and I struggled with it my first 2 years, was just trying to be perfect and be right with everything I did as I got into this. And I think just, being in that opportunity and realizing, a year ago before that, I was working women's lacrosse. I worked college football in the fall. Now I'm working in Major League Baseball. That opportunity doesn't happen like that. So I guess just that internal pressure, wanting to be perfect, like the slightest mistakes happen, you beat yourself up internally. So that wasn't, I guess, a fun aspect of the first 2 years, which I still enjoyed. It was, incredible to see the turnaround. You start this streak of 4 division titles in a row and everything. But
yeah.
I mean, and that's where the 2020 season was a blessing because you didn't have time to think in your head. It was, all right, um, our equipment staff, we could only hire one bat boy. I was largely the only person upstairs, really just doing a lot of that stuff in game of putting laundry out, restocking coolers. And that a lot of that's because our assistants, Hunter and Eric, they've got stuff they need to do during the game. So they could help me out when they could, but it was, you come up with your own routines, how to set stuff up to be able to put laundry back, fold towels, and all that before the game ends. And just doing all of that, I guess, allowed me, when at the end of the season, to take stock on it and realize, you do belong here. You shouldn't have that doubt. You shouldn't, always be beating yourself up because, there's no point in trying to be perfect because it doesn't exist. So it just, that 2020 season was a blessing in disguise, just to help me get out of my own head. And I guess finally have that confidence in myself, know that absolutely I belong here. But yeah, I mean, just the stress of that season with knowing what the COVID protocol was, being understaffed, That was definitely a tough 60 game season. The best way to summarize it, it really was a college season for us because I think if you had the 60 games plus the postseason, it evens out, I think, to however long a college baseball season would be for a team that is trying to get to Omaha, try to win a national championship. So, the games are more magnified. I mean, for us coming off of the way 2019 ended, you want to see the guys do well, still try to win a playoff series, go deep in the playoffs, try to win a World Series. So there was that because the games are so much more magnified. It's the pandemic. There's nothing you can really do except watch the games and hope the guys are going to win and try to get into a 16 team playoff. So there was that. Just the protocol. We would help out the visiting side with unpacking teams that came in, just because they were understaffed too. It was just a tough grind. There were nights where I think early in the season, I tried to calculate it out. I was at the stadium for, I think, 37 of a 50-hour period just because you had to wait on teams coming in. And I think we had a 2 game series with Tampa and then a 3 game series with the Mets. So Tampa's here for 48 hours. They leave. The Mets are coming in. It was just a tough grind, and that was what made it sink in. This is going to be really hard to get through. I tried to draw motivation from Apollo 13, the quote, "This will be our finest hour." I don't know if it was, I guess, fully that for everyone across the board in baseball, but you know what? We got through, or we were able to, I wouldn't say get through the season, but, we completed the season. A champion was crowned. I think still to pull that off was pretty incredible for everybody. But it was a stressful time. It really was. And obviously the way the season ended in 2020 wasn't fun, but there was that little part that was like, hey, did get through it. We made it through this season. Because of course there were times in the beginning I didn't think we were gonna get it off the ground. I'm sure other people shared that same thought with just what's going on with COVID. Can we really pull this off with COVID protocol, avoiding outbreaks, which that didn't happen. There were teams who had outbreaks during the season. But of course you didn't want to be the person that does something that gets other people sick, something that just puts the season in jeopardy. You don't want to be that person. So just all of that made it a really tough several months to get through, but we made it through. Yeah, it was it was certainly a
Yeah.
memorable season. It's one I'll never forget, to say the least.
Yeah, it's there's no manual for something like that. Like we can all prepare as much as we can for most things, but no one ever could have anticipated, in 2019 what was going to be in store that next year. So, like you said, we all persevered, you all persevered and got through it, and it all, we're here now. Everything has worked out, but I know we still kind of had those guidelines a little bit in place. It was obviously a little bit looser, and now we're pretty much back to where we were. But so 2021, I guess, were you thinking going into 2021, coming out of 2020, thinking like, wow, this kind of feels back to normal a little bit. If we can do this, we could definitely do this. Again, like we had to complete this very challenging situation with COVID, and now we're kind of back into a normal season. Did it kind of feel, I don't want to say easier, but did it feel a little bit like, okay, nothing like what we did it won't be like that again. It'll be, you know, back to normal basically, or at least a little bit back to normal.
I mean, I remember that winter, I think, was when vaccines started coming out, but of course it wasn't available for people, I think, under 65. So I knew we're probably going to start the season off the same way with COVID protocol until
Yeah.
maybe vaccines become available. And eventually we got to the end of spring training, and that spring training was tough because we knew we were back in the same COVID protocol. So wearing masks for 12, 13 hours a day. We had to have players still distance in the locker room. So and thankfully us being in Northport in a new complex helped. If we were at the Wide World of Sports complex in Disney, it would have been impossible, I think, just to be able to socially distance players between lockers because we had our major league side was in the Wide World of Sports complex stadium. The minor league side was in the arena next door. That was where all their locker rooms were. But at least now in Northport, everyone's in the same building. The minor league side is just literally down the hall. So we were able to just socially distance everyone across, three or four locker rooms in that sense because the minor league system is set up in pods for lockers, and that made it easier at least. But it was still, you're in Florida, you're wearing masks for 12, 13 hours a day. I had to go on the road in Bat Boy a few times. So when I would take that, and I still had to wear a mask to do it. So when I would
Yeah.
take the surgical mask off and I see the underline of my beard and it's all yellow and brown, yeah, those were tough times having to grind through with that. But spring training was tough because we were still in the protocol. At the end of spring, vaccines were starting to become available for teams, for other adults to be able to start getting vaccinated. So we jumped on that, and I think it was in mid-June. We were one of the teams that hit the vaccine threshold to start relaxing some of the protocols. I believe players who were unvaccinated still had to test every day, but if you were vaccinated, I think it took you off of that. You didn't have to test. If you had symptoms, obviously you were going to be tested just to take precaution and everything else. But we could finally make the locker room look like normal. For a year and a half, my locker room was in the laundry room. We had to move out of our staff locker room to be able to move coaches and other people in there just to make that work and socially distance everyone. I think I was playing Ode to Joy on my phone as I was loading stuff into my locker at 2 in the morning because we stayed late through the night to just move people back into lockers and try to make things normal again. But that made the second half of the season much easier. But that first half and spring training and all that, it was pretty tough still to grind through a lot of that COVID protocol. Wondering, is any of this actually going to be relaxed? Are we just going to have to get through 2021 and maybe this season, a lot of that COVID protocol will change?
So how much sweeter was it after 2020, after the start of 2021? Braves get off to a kind of a tough start, and then it clicks in the second half, and they make the playoffs, and you're alongside, just doing your job like normal, but you're in the playoffs with the team. Common goal, obviously, go as far as you can. What was that journey like for you to be alongside that team in the second half of the season as they were getting hot, and then going into the playoffs, and then going all the way through the playoffs, and of course the World Series against Houston?
Well, I mean, there were some pretty good highlights in the first half, I'll say. I mean, uh, I think we had that crazy game with the Phillies that went 12 innings. It probably would have been game of the regular season, but the Field of Dreams games, I think, usurped us in the final rankings of that, which it should have. That was an incredible game. Um, and Max Fried had the walk off on 4th of July. My parents flew down here to Atlanta that week to see the city for the first time. They flew down from Milwaukee, and so they were at the game. I made the joke, I got to have my parents here more often if we're going to have games like that. There was that. I mean, obviously, look, there were some pretty tough losses in there too. Also, the Bucks won the NBA title. I sat in the trainer's room the night that happened and watched it. Cried my eyes out because I never thought I'd see something like that at a point in my life. But that was pretty cool. And honestly, at that point, I thought maybe that might be the highlight of the year, which wouldn't have been bad. But obviously, the way the season started out wasn't easy for everyone. But I give credit to the guys in there. They kept showing up, they kept grinding away at it, and eventually, obviously, things turned around. And that second half was just an incredible run to be able to get into the playoffs, to win the division. Uh, that first series against Milwaukee was pretty cool because that's a team I grew up watching. So to see them in that series was fun. To win that series was awesome. To set up that rematch with LA, and it was funny because I don't think many people gave him a chance to win it. I saw one prediction said Dodgers in five. Will look back and think, wow, that was pretty quick. So to see the guys be able to win that series, to clinch the pennant at home, was incredible, and realize you're going to be in the World Series. And then just the Fall Classic itself, those 3 games in Atlanta were crazy. The first 2 games of the NLCS in Atlanta were also incredible too. But yeah, I mean, and then to be there in Houston when they won the World Series, cried again, had to. I think so much of that was just joy and shock, but also as you're going along this run, people keep tweeting out the crazy facts about what the Braves are doing, how improbable this is. So to see them be able to pull that off, and I went back and looked at it. I think we're the only other team with a losing record at the break to win the World Series. I think we were one of 4 teams to at least make the Fall Classic when that happens. Yeah, there's probably a million other ones. I just can't think of them, but it's still just a pretty improbable run to see how the city embraced it. Atlanta hasn't had a fun last quarter century when it comes to sports. Georgia hasn't. So for the Braves to do it, and you see just how excited people were. The parade was incredible. I mean, the parade too was. I think that's more for the fans to come out, support, thank the team for what they did. The biggest thing I took away from the parade is that it's the last time you're going to have largely everyone together. There's going to be reunions in the future, but there's no guarantee you're going to get everyone back from that group from that particular season. So that's the biggest stock I took away from the parade. But just to see the joy everyone had there, it was really cool. And I think it further cemented how big this was for uh, just Atlanta, for Georgia sports, for the South too, since it's Braves country. It's the only major team in the South. I mean, Tampa and Miami, that's Southern Florida, but just everywhere else in the South, the Braves are really it. I mean, if MLB expands in the future, I think that's probably going to change. But it just for such a long time, the Braves have just been that here in the South. So it was cool to see the impact it had across the region and across Braves country. And then obviously what Georgia did, winning a national title back in January, and I was texting my buddy Gage on that too. I mean, for what they did for the state, just because Georgia football hasn't won since I think 1980, something like that, for them too. So it was just incredible to see how the region kind of came out, supported those two teams, or at least the state of Georgia for Georgia football. I can't speak for the rest of the SEC on that, but yeah, it just was such a cool time, and it was great. There's a little bit of disappointment when the run ends because you want to see it keep going, but you realize that that's it. Yeah, it's always something I'll never forget. Certainly, it was just an incredible ride to be a part of.
I know you're a humble guy, and you obviously give credit where it's due. You know, the players, the staff, the ones that are actually out there playing, and you know everyone that's a part of the actual outcome of games. But like I said, you're still part of the staff. What was it like for you to get the World Series ring, to see the trophy? You said the parade. Did you ever allow yourself to think about something that big that's kind of more or less out of your control, or was it just always I'm just doing my job and whatever perks that come along with it are obviously great, but what was that moment like when you were able to, get a World Series ring, for instance?
Oh, I sat in my locker and I cried after I got it. Same thing. Just that emotion hits you. Um, it's career goals you worked for. It's crazy for me to think 5 years really, and this happens. It really is nuts, and I get emotional thinking back on it because of how improbable it is, and especially just again what the guys did last year. But of course, look, I know my role. I can't do what Ronald Acuna does, or
Right.
any of the guys who are in that locker room can. That just I can't. So I know my role. All of us, I think, on the clubhouse staff, we all play a part. You still feel a part of that team. You go through the grind with those guys because we're right there along with them for from February through, in our case, to early November. I think we had the parade and it was maybe several weeks before Thanksgiving happened when we got through it. So, yeah, so I know my role and understand where it is. Of course, look, you want to see the guys do well. You want to see them be able to accomplish something like that. You want to see them repeat this year, but no one's done that in 25 years, almost, that in baseball. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm thankful for the journey I've had. I'm thankful I get to be a part of something like this, and I'm just glad that again, I'm here. I get to take stock. I get to work in an MLB clubhouse during the season, so it's awesome.
I'm sure you watch the road games, but do you also kind of use that opportunity to kind of get away a little bit? Because I know the season's long, it's a grind. Do you kind of allow yourself to kind of get away from it a little bit when you have the opportunity to?
Yeah, well, the hard part was again, first 2 years I was just so locked into work and everything, so I never really got out in Atlanta. And then pandemic starts, so with protocol, it was you really can't do anything except go get takeout. Even the first part of last year was trying to just again make sure you weren't doing something that could get you sick or potentially cause an outbreak. And then yeah, so this year again been trying to do more of that. I had to move apartments in the middle of the year, so I've been settling into a new place recently. But yeah, it's slowly but surely trying to get out more, watching less of the road games, because otherwise it's when do you feel like you have a break from work, so to speak. But I think as we get into the pennant race, that's just going to happen. I'm going to be watching every road game to see what's
Oh
happening
yeah.
and all that as we try to get back into the playoffs and see what happens this year. But yeah, so that's slowly going to become more of the goal of trying to just get away, be able to relax, enjoy that time when the team's out of town.
So in the off season, what's your off seasons typically like?
Well, off season, I'm still down here in Atlanta. Year round, I don't go back. I mean, I'll go back up to Milwaukee to see family and visit them at Christmas and all that. But I tried one year Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that was too much for me. I had to choose one or the other. But yeah, I'll go see family. I think now is the pandemic. It feels like it's ending or hopefully ending. I think trying to travel more, get out. I'll probably look into doing that this off season. At the end of 2020, I went to Key West for a week with my parents because they said we're going to go there if you want to see us at Christmas. So that's up to you. So that was an easy one. But yeah, trying to travel more, get out, and a lot of that again is just the pandemic restricted so much of that the last couple of years. So now I think just trying to get out more will definitely be a goal in the off season and just be able to travel finally.
Obviously, you're loving what you're doing currently and you're just enjoying the moment and doing the day to day. But what's your future aspirations? Like, would you want to be like the main clubhouse guy, or would it just be as long as you're in sports? Or have you thought about that kind of? I'm sure you've thought about it, but what's kind of like your maybe your aspirations? Looking into the future.
Well, of course, I want to be able to move up to get to being an assistant or running a clubhouse. I mean, there's guys with a ton of great experience, in front of me, and you think about those things too. Is that opportunity going to be here? Might you have to go elsewhere? And of course, I've loved my time in Atlanta. I'm open to if opportunities are elsewhere for me to get that chance, whether it's here in baseball. I mean, I've told my buddies in college football, you get that right opportunity, don't think I wouldn't be, tempted or anything like that. But of course, I love baseball. I love where I'm at currently. I've definitely learned you've got to be, happy and enjoy that in the moment. Because if you try to look in the future, well, you're never really going to be happy at all. Then, if you keep looking to the future in that regard, so yeah, I think the focus has been just staying in the moment, being happy where I am. But of course, you have those goals to want to be able to move up and just having those aspirations for better in your career. I'm sure you've thought about that as well.
Noah, thanks for taking some time to chat with me about your journey. Like I said at the beginning, you reached out to me, and here I am reaching out to you to kind of hear what your story was like. So it's really cool to see how you've, made it into sports. Thanks again for the time, and I hope you have a good rest of your day and a good weekend.
Thanks, man. Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.